Blacksmith of the Apocalypse. By Arcuser. Chapter 821 Booklet of Paths. A day later, Seth had already worked his way up to making something complex like a acoustic guitar. While his instrument maker rose to Adept Level 3, his carpentry also rose to Journeyman Level 2 while working on wooden instruments. The blacksmith found that his abilities to forge even something like wood eased fashioning specific parts for the instruments tremendously. He was currently occupied with gluing the prepared pieces prepared together when the princess appeared in the workshop. "Here's the copy of the Paths to Legend Krina knows of," Lena said unceremoniously. She looked tired. "Did you even sleep since yesterday? You should take a break once in a while. Don't overwork yourself," he advised her as he took the booklet. He had heard that the princess had barely left her office since he returned, probably not since she got that news from Cade. The signs finally started showing. "I would love to, but there is way too much to do, even with Mary and her people doing the lion part of the work. I take this little errand job to give everyone who stayed home their copy as a break," she answered with a brave smile. "You are a competent leader, Lena. You out of all of us, should know best that you aren't helping anybody by overworking yourself. Rushing things will only make the final result sloppy or even fail," he said as he put the booklet aside. "How can you stay so relaxed and calm, when you also know what is going on in Y City?" she finally asked. Seth tapped with his finger on the workbench for a moment, as he thought about his answer. "I will be honest, I know my priorities. Am I angry and appalled? Yes. But at the end of the day, I treasure the people I love more, and I constantly think of what could happen to them if we rush things. What if we make a mistake and fall into their trap? What if they have some super powerful secret weapon? What if I... This is why I prefer making preparations and taking the way that will ensure our safety, even if it means that we let bad things happen for a while longer. But still, we have no idea how many are dying while we are. Lena, I believe you are a good person and you want to save as many as possible. I, on the other hand, am a selfish person. I'm not ready to risk mine or the life of my friends to help others. That reminds me of someone. Suddenly had a brilliant idea. Can you tell Cade to send us pictures of the situation there? Maybe a video would be even better." Why the sudden question? The princess was confused by the sudden topic change. "Let's just say I know someone whose life I am willing to risk. He could help Cade save people, while we are preparing." Seth doubted Lena was the only one stressed by the situation. If this would help to calm them, he was willing to make some concessions and show forgiveness. "I see, I guess that could work. I will ask Cade for video proof right away," she mumbled before hurriedly running off. It didn't seem like she learned anything from Seth's serious talk. He could only sigh and shrug his shoulders. "Wolfram, can you retrieve that item for me?" he asked after calling out the Grey Knight. "Of course, Lord. I wish you would stop calling me that." "I'm sorry, Lord. I'm afraid I can't do that. You watched too many movies. This conversation serves no further purpose. I will leave now," he said and walked to the workshop door. "At least he didn't call me Lord before leaving," Seth mumbled to himself. Wolfram halted for a hot second. "Lord." He spoke one word before running off, out of the workshop. It was great the golems developed, but why did he have to act like a teenager? Being left alone in the workshop, Seth finally had the chance to have a look at the booklet. Similar to the list of paths the quest asked him to choose from, the booklet was a catalogue of oaths, their power and the unlock conditions. The entries, like Lena before, confirmed his suspicions that paths could be unlocked through a combination of skills, achievements, and titles. Of course, the first things he looked up were the paths he had partially unlocked. Legendary Craftsman, for example. However, the moment he saw the unlock condition, he decided that it was not worth it. Legendary Craftsman. All items made using the Master Tier crafting skills will gain a basic bonus based on the level of existence. Any relic-rated items have a chance to upgrade instantly after completion. Chance increases with level of existence. Domain allows the bearer to use power of existence to artificially improve a relic to the legendary ranking. The upgrade will give bonus to basic stats, attack, defense, durability, and may offer options to slightly manipulate the enchantments and synergies. Achievements needed to unlock. 1 master of at least 5 basic crafting skills. 2 the creation of 1 legendary item per mastered skill using the mastered skill. It also had a short list of skills attached that have and have not been counted as the 5 skills to be mastered. Enchantment and alchemy, for example, were excluded from basic crafting skills. The only question Seth was bothered with, however, was who in the world had so much time at hand to master that many basic crafting skills? Seth had all kinds of improvements that allowed him to barely bring 3 crafting skills to the master level in a relatively short time. However, this only worked for those 3. The blacksmith didn't get his hope up to master carpentry, instrument maker, or sewing any time in the near future, even if he completely focused on them. Blacksmith of Legends was only mentioned in passing by the booklet. He was not the first to partially unlock the option, but it seemed like nobody of Krina had ever disclosed what it took to unlock the path, if anybody ever even managed to. The other path he found was Calamity of Fire. According to the description in the booklet, the Calamity of Fire could use its power of existence to make fire unnaturally destructive. Even to the point of ignoring defense and harming existences originally immune to fire. This didn't sound too bad. The entry named various fire-related titles, the mastery of fire magic or a similar ability, and another requirement. Seth was relatively sure he fulfilled the title and skill requirement, but the last requirement was not something he was willing to commit. Causing a calamity with a death count of at least 5,000 innocent intelligent creatures, the third option stated quite clearly that a calamity had to strike incredible fear into the hearts of people. He wasn't a saint, but committing a slaughter for more powerful fire? Denied. Although he found a few, most of his partial paths were not there. Even though he couldn't find the paths such as Rhymecaster or Wordsmith, he found a bunch of bard-related paths. It showed him quite clearly that his lack of skill was probably the reason those paths were not unlocked. The bard-related paths all relied on a combination of titles and skill levels. Only a few required a specific achievement. In the end, the booklet was no great help for him. There were no paths that interested him, that he could easily unlock, and the one path he had partially unlocked and really interested him, Blacksmith of Legends, was not in the booklet. Maybe he would really have to decide between Legendary Blacksmith and the Architect of Life. It irked him that he once again stood before the decision to either become a better craftsman or create stronger minions when he really wanted both. If he was allowed to make a custom order, a path that also included his bardic skill would be even better. Something like the legendary jamming Blacksmith of Legends? Putting the booklet aside, he decided to delay the decision again. He felt depressed since there was no option that spoke to him. Maybe it was like he told Beemont. Just acting naturally would open the right doors instead of forcing something. He felt better about not making a decision now than forcing one. It wasn't like stepping on the path would be immediately helpful anyway. Maybe if he chose Architect of Life and could instantly rank up to a legend. There was no way it was that easy. His temporary goal of quickly choosing a path had dramatically failed. There was no use procrastinating any longer. The blacksmith still needed to wait for the hanging tree to become a legend before continuing on his instrument. He had left processing the leftover legendary to accessories to Sivri. Nothing more important stood in his way anymore. It was time to make a complete armor of lunacy. Chapter 822 Gone with the Wind. Delta, warehouse under governmental control. Rocking his chair back and forth, he stared at the wall of screens with a bored expression. One shouldn't misunderstand, he was glad to have gotten such a calm job with his low level and a common class like guard. Still, he couldn't help feeling bored sitting in the little observation room all night, staring at the screens. It wasn't like anyone would really dare to break into this place. Heck, how would anyone even know about this warehouse to begin with? It wasn't like this was some rundown abandoned storage house on the outskirts. How would some random casual thief walk into a subterranean storage complex of the government? Only insiders would be able to know what was down here and how to get it. On that note, he was glad that he was only stationed in the upper levels. The things on this floor were rather tame, nothing to commit treason for, but who knew what kind of crazy stuff they hid on the lower levels. He was in a position where the chance to have someone make trouble for him was the lowest. The stuff he was watching out over was only several rooms of boxes with uncommon and rare materials and some armories with uncommon and rare items on display. He also had an eye on the empty workshops a floor above him, but there was nothing worth stealing there during the night. As he was leaning back on his chair, doing a risky maneuver of balancing on a single chair leg, a sudden eruption shook the complex and he inelegantly fell over, face first on the floor. In a panic, he pulled himself back up to check the cameras to make sure it wasn't on his level. For a moment his heart raced in his chest, fearing he would actually have to take action. However, nothing on the screens had changed. A tremendous relief washed over him, as he put his chair back up and plopped on it. The adrenaline was still pumping, but he was already starting to relax. It had been 10 minutes and tension had slowly left his body when the door of the security office suddenly sprang open. "Do. What are you doing? Why didn't you press the alarm?" the leader of the security team shouted at him angrily. The man was in his mid-40s, but his level was already above 80, giving him an overwhelming aura. Do jumped up from his chair in reaction to the sudden jump scare. Security team leader, what brings you here?" he stammered, trying to straighten his sloppy uniform. "What do you mean? Someone broke into this floor and you have nothing better to do than sit there and watch? Why didn't you press the alarm?" the man asked, incensed. "Team leader, what do you mean? Look, nothing happened here. I thought the ruckus was on a different floor," he tried to explain himself and pointed at the screen, where nothing was wrong. The team leader squinted at him but gave the camera feed a once-over. Shocked, he had to admit that it didn't seem like Do's fault. At first glance, there seemed nothing wrong with the videos shown. If he didn't know about the massive hole that extended through several walls and ended in one of the laboratories, he wouldn't have suspected anything either. "Look, the hole is in a place that is hard to see on the screens, but you can see it here. You are telling me you didn't see someone entering and taking the statue of the hero away?" the team leader asked, suspicious. "The statue of? Oh my god," the guard only saw it after it was pointed out. The statue of the hero, who had lost his duel against the mysterious Knight of Minas Mar, had been stored in one of the labs in his area. It had been stored there to try and dispel the weird transmutation magic the hero had been hit with, unsuccessfully so far. "Why would anyone steal that statue?" he asked cluelessly. "That is my question, Do. Did someone pay you to not raise the alarm?" "No. No, I swear. When the place shook, I was distracted for a moment, but I didn't see any movement on the screens at any point," he asserted in a small panic. "So you want me to believe someone broke in, took the statue, and was gone before you could see it?" "Why yes. We are living in weird times, and considering the whole, it had to be someone extremely powerful. I will believe you for now, Do, but I have an eye on you," he threatened but didn't go any further. When the security team leader finally left, the guard broke down on his chair. "Minas Mar. Oh Lord, I have procured the item you wanted," Wolfram reported to Seth, who was testing enchantments on armor pieces. It had been a day since Seth had given him the task, but he didn't expect the golem to solve it this quickly. "Nobody saw you, right?" "Yes, I'm sure nobody will know about our involvement." "So? Where is he?" the blacksmith asked, not seeing the statue anywhere. "I left the package in one of the basement rooms of the embassy. I didn't know whether the Lord would have wanted me to bring the thing into Minas March," the Grey Knight reported dutifully. "Good thinking, I really don't want him down here. Even if he is currently just a statue." "Good work, Wolfram, thank you. May I return to Legion, my lord?" "You want to go back in? I thought you would like some fresh air, but if that is your wish." Seth shrugged and opened a gate to Legion's inner world for Wolfram. "Thank you, Lord." The golem didn't say anything about wanting fresh air and simply thanked him before walking through the portal. Watching Wolfram leave, Seth brought out his communication orb to call Lena. "Do you need something?" the princess asked slowly. She sounded tired. It didn't seem like she took his advice to heart. "It might be a little early, but do you have the evidence?" "Wolfram already managed to procure our friend. Yeah, she sent me a video orb this afternoon. Seems like Cade was already preparing footage to secretly publish the situation across Y City," the princess answered. So Cade isn't just waiting either, but didn't we decide against going public?" The reason was simple. They couldn't trust the court of public opinion. It was much too easy to sway, especially when Delta and Y City had a lot more power in the propaganda game. The worst case scenario was not that nobody believed them, but that they would split their own people, too. "I know, but I can also understand her. She fighting an unwinnable fight alone. I guess she thinks that if she goes public with her info and raises some awareness in Y City, there will be people willing to help," Lena said with a sigh. "If this works, she will have a powerful helper at her side. Even if he is annoying." Seth's plan was to free the hero and pull them on their side. After all, he played a goody two-shoes and his class grew through heroic acts. What was more heroic than helping suppressed people escape from a dystopian regime? The blacksmith and the princess were in the basement of the embassy. After looking for a few minutes, they found the metallic hero sitting in the middle of a dark storage room for office supplies. "How do we speak to him?" Lena asked as if she had only now thought of this problem. After all their high-level priests were currently out. Don't worry. Superior Cure, Seth cast the skill from his golden fleece at the head of the hero, Ben Harker. Although Wolfram, as the origin of the power, could have also dispelled it, the blacksmith didn't want to call him back after their previous farewell. It felt awkward to bring him back out just several minutes later, just to do this. Slowly, under the effect of the skills, Harka's natural skin color came back as his face lost the metallic sheen. Once Seth was done, the light returned to the hero's eyes. What happened? What did you do to me? Seth stared at his mug for a moment and took a deep breath. Lena, I will leave this to you, he said and bailed, leaving the tired princess alone with the tiresome dude. Chapter 823 Armor of Lunacy. Over the following days, the 4 field teams that had gone out to train in their new constellation slowly returned to Minas Mar to receive their copy of the little booklet. Much to Seth's joy, Mina and Finn also returned. The blacksmith had spent these days with exploring different enchantments using blueprints before testing the final enchantments on the prototype to make sure all worked together like in the simulation. The enchantment he had come up with was something inspired by a work of Forge Brand. The Spear of Bitter Mercy, the weapon series Soul was trapped in previously. The weapon had the ability to deflect magic attacks during a stabbing attack. With today's knowledge, Seth understood that this was partially possible because of the special characteristic of the Ithilden used for the spear. It seemed that the material his predecessor had used was especially good for enchantments and the conduction of magic power. Even better than the baseline of Ithilden. Even when the Ithilden of Earth was not as good, Seth was working on a whole armor, not just a spear. Inspired by the spear, the blacksmith had worked out an enchantment that had a similar effect if engraved and interconnected across the whole armor set. The best part was that, on the level of the individual armor piece, this engraving only took the space of a single, complex circuit. This meant he could still add a few more sizable enchantments in addition to the set effect on each armor piece. He felt quite accomplished having finally created something worth his status as a master enchanter. Being able to spend time with his girlfriends again lifted his mood after the disappointment he felt with the booklet. With their boost, he felt a lot more motivated to finally start on the first armor of lunacy. As he started forging the first armor piece, an almost happy song rose to the rhythmic clanks of his hammer. It carried visions of excess and feasting, of people following their carnal desires. This was the song of Harut and Marut, who taught people magic to tempt them and finally fell victim to their own desires. As the song played, only accompanied by the beat of the hammer forging the metal, the blacksmith finished one piece of armor after the other. This one was meant for Allison, so he made them to size from the start. The alchemist had decided to aim for the path of legendary alchemist, which was why this armor fully aimed to increase her magic power in battle. Since they were tight on time, Seth didn't bother slowing his forging speed artificially to gain more proficiency. No, this time he used his crafting stations to their full extent and finished the armor set in a record time of 6 hours. With trembling hand, he finally put the hammer aside and stopped the song he had been belching on repeat for the full 6 hours. Sweet bliss filled his head when the cool stamina potion drenched his parched throat. Keeping all his skills from channeling to singing to energy manipulation 3 activated for this long took a toll even on him. The reason he went this far was that he needed all 10 pieces of the set to continue with the next step. To engrave the enchantment that would add the new set effect, he needed all 10 pieces to make sure that the individual parts of the circuits would be able to line up and work correctly together. As he was taking a break, Sivris approached him carefully. A few days ago he had given her some legendary silver and the sun bead to make a legendary item for Linri. It was a test, but it was also because he didn't want to taint the holy aura of the bead with demonic enchantments. The result was impressive and not any worse than what Seth could have done. Despite doing nothing, the description still mentioned it being a collaboration between him and her, since he was the owner of the skill that summoned her. After the Golden Dwarf had proven her skill as a goldsmith, Seth had entrusted her with the small rest of Olympian silver that was left, the special rated bones of Seth, and the various item that was worth being used together with it in jewelry, like the Orb of Dusk, the Salamander Core and the other elemental crystal aside from Maltus. Sivri, are you already done with the items I gave you? Seth asked her surprised when she approached him. And no, I just wanted to make sure you are okay. I was worried since you went on for so long. She said shyly. Thank you for worrying, Seth answered with a smile. Usually, he was all alone here, except for Cerberus, and Cerberus didn't speak. Seeing someone suddenly show concern was a little touching, even when he was just fine. If you really want to help me, please keep teaching the others as you did so far. Seth had noticed that Sivri had gotten friendly with the other blacksmiths and goldsmiths here and would often put her work away to go around and give them advice on things. Especially Oriabel, the man Seth had taken in as a student, was showing signs of improvement with her care. After the care he received in Mina's Mar, he was now close to reaching the craftsman tier, and Sivri's advice helped polish his skills where he was still lacking. Having her go around in the role of an assistant teacher lifted another burden from Seth's conscience, since he didn't really have the time to guide them as a teacher should. You knew? Is it really okay? She asked, surprised. Of course, just keep doing as you did so far. After their little conversation, he stayed seated and ate a little snack until he felt rested enough to continue. For the next step he needed a mannequin, so he directly ported to Allison's laboratory. Oh, fairy of the lab, are you busy right now? Please bless me with your presence in my realm of fire and smoke, he warbled jokingly. The door flew open, the entrance of the scarecrow. The heck are you talking about? What do you want? For a moment Seth really had a hard time recognizing that it was actually a grumpy Allison who had opened the door. She looked tired. Her face was encrusted with black soot and her hair stood up in all directions. The alchemist looked like she just wandered out of an explosion, or she slept inside a chimney. Seth was still unsure whether it was explodey hair or just bed hair. What do you want, Seth? She reminded him that he was holding a conversation. World peace. From me. What do you want from me? She grunted, unnerved. That you come down to my workshop with and hold still while I touch you all over. Her expression didn't change even a little bit as she looked at him in silence. To fit your armor correctly. You are no fun when you are sleepy. You think my reaction would be different if I wasn't up all night? Seth pursed his lips, pondering. Probably not. Let's go. The quicker we do it, the quicker you are back in your lab. Fine, she gave in and they teleport back into Seth's workshop. Like I said, you just have to stay still and let me put the armor on you. Defeated, she unequipped her robe and shoes, leaving her standing in the middle of the workshop only wearing an undershirt and sweatpants. Seth squinted at her. When was the last time you ate something proper? You look like you lost weight when we're as thin as a reed, to begin with. What? Are you my grandma now? Don't tell me you are going to pep me up. I'm not some hump. She was rudely interrupted by a chocolate bar that was shoved in her mouth. Zip it. I bet you didn't eat anything for days and survived on stamina potions or something like that. A potion can't substitute a good meal for long. At least eat that while I'm fitting the armor to your scrawny existence. She didn't counter anything. She simply ate the chocolate in silence and cooperated like a dress-up doll while Seth put a padded shirt, pants, and armor pieces on top of her current outfit. Ugh! Isn't this a little tight? She asked, blushing when he tightened the cuirass. It's not like you have anything that could be squished, he teased her with a smirk but widened the setting of the leather straps again. How does it feel now? Better. How does it fit? He finally asked after putting the full armor on her. Allison now looked like a slender knight in a delicately worked full-plate armor, set with moonstones. The only difference from an armor was that she wore a circlet, instead of a helmet. It feels surprisingly good. Especially the boots and gloves, she answered in a much better mood. She spoke of the boots and gloves that were the foundation for the armor plates. Seth had asked Nico Booz to prepare them, using Twilight Wing leather from the dungeon he raided. Good, just let me sketch in where to put the enchantments. Then we can go to the cafeteria and grab a bite, Seth answered, concentrating as he started sketching on the armor plates. A light. Ah. You tricked me. But you will come along and eat something proper, okay? She sighed. You won, but let me go wash up first, the soot-covered alchemist bargained. I will graciously allow you to make yourself presentable. They met Mina and Finn on the way to the cafeteria, who were coming to get the blacksmith. After having a meal and making sure Allison actually ate her fill, Seth decided to finish for the day and left with the two and planned to continue the next day. Chapter 824 Armor of Lunacy, 2. After having sketched how to place the connected engravings, Seth could immediately start engraving when he entered the workshop the next day. After finishing the combined circuit, the blacksmith started adding the individual enchantments. These enchantments themselves were nothing wild or exotic, so they wouldn't get in the way of the armor's magic. Taking into account the encroachment of lunacy, most of these additional circuits were meant to reinforce willpower. This strengthened the effect but also protected the wearer from actually becoming a lunatic. Apart from willpower, he also included enchantments to raise intelligence and mana regeneration. The only items that slightly fell out of the norm were the circlet and the cuirass. There was another advantage to these enchantments, as they didn't need a lot of mana to be powered. On the circlet, Seth engraved the mind barrier as well as etched the poem for the strategist's mind of the demon Eligos. Also in hope that it would help the wearer to keep a clear mind despite the encroachment of lunacy. For the cuirass, Seth used something similar to the demonic magic of Anima Well, Mana Well. While Anima Well could create a basin for the life force absorbed from an opponent, Mana Well did the same but with mana from a spell or skill like Mana Drain. It was in preparation for the next step, the infusion of a soul. On the cuirass, the many moonstones he set on it would act as the receptacle of the Mana Well. Seth didn't intend to give each piece an individual soul but use one soul to further bind the armor together as a set. It was also easier to use this method for the effects he wished to imbue with the soul. The soul he used was the result of the soul refinery and the soul he bought from Tanos Mole. It was a massive rare soul with a talent for magic. The spirit blacksmith had deliberately not tried to use an especially unique soul, since he wished for the final armor to be reproducible. Seth added exactly 2 enchantments to the soul armor. One was an extensive text that called upon a similar effect as his damaged reflection forging ballad. The other was mana absorption. This enchantment could transform mana from a spell it was hit with, into mana for the user. Not only would it help recover mana but also to fill the mana well with power. This way he managed to not only negate one of the weaknesses of his connected circuit but even turn it into strength. His enchantment alone was able to channel off spells that hit the armor and distribute them evenly across the armor. Depending on the power of the spell, the armor could be damaged or overloaded. By tweaking it a little and adding the mana well and mana absorption, spells that hit the armor would be distributed across the armor and absorbed, channeling the absorbed magic to the mana well of the cuirass and lessening the overall burden on the items. Effectively it would allow the user to generate mana by being hit with spells. Still, if the well and the user's mana pool were full and the magic had nowhere to go, the armor could still be overloaded and damage could make its way through. It also didn't account for physical damage, which was why Seth also made the decision to add damage reflection to the shared soul. It was a workaround to not using the forging ballad on each piece individually. Even though the idea didn't sound complex at all, it had cost Seth a few sleepless nights to come up with a way to really make it work. Now all he needed to do was infuse the pieces of the soul into the armor set and finish the whole project in one fell swoop. Ding! You have created a relic rated item. Proficiency gained x10. Ding! You have finished a relic rated set with a high chance to become a legend. Ding! You have created a magnum opus. Plus 10 to all attributes. Your title World's Best Blacksmith has slightly improved. Ding! Title, Ilan gained. Your intelligence has reached 300 points. You gained the skill Acolyte. Hearing the sudden rush of notifications, Seth had to sit down for a moment. The blacksmith was stumped, when he heard that the armor of lunacy would be counted as a magnum opus, the same way the Scorpio armor was. He had not expected this at all, but he actually felt seen a lot more than when the message appeared for the Scorpio armor. He had gone through a lot to get the materials for the Scorpio armor, but he felt that he had put a lot more brain power and skill as a craftsman into the creation and planning of the armor of lunacy. It also mentioned that it had a high chance to become legendary. This was the first time he had made a relic with a high chance to achieve the legend status. Incredulous, he checked his status. It was true that he had gained 10 points in every attribute, which had also brought his intelligence to 303. Acolyte was a passive skill, similar to most of the other skills he gained through these titles. However, its effects were surprisingly convenient. It reduced the proficiency needed to level up, acquire, or learn a skill or spell by 5%. It didn't sound like a lot, but those were a flat 5% even for high-level skills. Its importance only improved the better his skills became. Calming down a little, he finally found the courage to look at his second magnum opus. Magic Imbibing Cuirass. Lunacy Relic Set 1/10. Relic. Physical DEF 1700. Mag DEF 2500. Durability 2700. 1 plus 30% to all stats in the moonlight. 2 plus 65% power of spells. 3 encroachment of lunacy. 4 plus 15% to all stats in any light. 5 plus 10% chant reduction. 6 plus 30% damage reflection. 7 mana absorption. 8 mana well. 9 plus 70 intelligence. 10 plus 1000 mana. Lunacy set effect. Passive skill, Lunar Charge. Active skill, Lunacy Unleashed. Set effect 10/10. Passive skill, Smith's Spell Recycler. A delicate cuirass made of rare Ithilden. It is the center part of the Lunacy set, a magnum opus of Master Smith, the first Master Enchanter, Master Blacksmith and Master Goldsmith of Earth. Superior craftsmanship and mysterious means have made every piece of the set a desirable item, but their true power show only when fully assembled. Once this cuirass becomes widely known, the item has a great chance to become legendary. It was exactly as he planned it. All items looked similar to this, except that mana well was unique to the cuirass. The other items offered plus 35% mana regeneration and would switch between added intelligence and willpower. Overall, only the options of the individual pieces already added 280 intelligence, 420 willpower, 280% mana regeneration, 100% additional casting reduction, having the casting time of the user, plus 650% to the power of spells, plus 10,000 mana, plus 150% to all stats in a lit environment and plus 300% in the moonlight. Just the last two already made someone over 5 times stronger on a moonlit night. The only thing he did not like was the initial name the system gave some of the items. Since this was his magnum opus, Seth decided to use his privilege as a master and rename the cuirass to Well of Lunacy. It was more fitting with the other names such as Hand of Lunacy for the gauntlets or the Path to Lunacy for the boots. Although Lap of Lunacy for the cuisses was not the worst, Seth rather renamed them to Surge of Lunacy, since they were the connection between the well and the path. He saw no reason to rename anything else since it had no good metaphor that could replace pauldrons of lunacy. What he especially liked was the lunatic mind, as the system called the circlet. After tweaking the names, he polished the armor and finally assembled it on a rack. Sitting down, he simply stared at it as his smile grew wider. He enjoyed the feeling of having accomplished something he worked so hard on. It was no immediate feeling of success, but a slow burning fire of satisfaction and excitement for continuing. Chapter 825 Fat Choker. After finishing the first complete version of the Armor of Lunacy, Seth couldn't help looking forward to putting one on every mage in the field teams. But not today. Like anyone who had prepared good presents, he was giddy to hand them out. Since everyone had now returned, he could finally do so. It wasn't just the armor that waited to be worn by Allison. Seth also had the fiery nail and the item Sivri had created. While Seth was preoccupied with the Armor of Lunacy, Sivri had worked hard on making accessories with the remnants of the legendary and special materials. It was a shame Hubert McCarthy had not contacted him again since before Minas Mar declared their independence. He didn't know whether McCarthy had a deal with the opposition, was simply careful, or had his own stuff going on. Seth only knew that it was a shame to have lost such a good source of raw material. Before he knew it, he arrived at the door to Allison's laboratory. "Allison, are you in?" he sang and knocked at the door. The person opening the door was hard to recognize. It took a moment before Seth realized it was Allison, but she had washed her face and brushed her hair. The bags under her eyes had also become lighter as if she managed to get a good night's sleep. It had been a long time since he saw her that groomed. Had he ever? "Oh, Seth? Did you come to bring the armor?" she asked, almost excited. "Jup. And you? Did you wash up for your date with your new armor, or did you finally find someone?" She blushed but didn't answer. "Bullseye. Ho ho, has spring finally come for Allison?" he teased with a wide smile. "Stop it. I won't dig." "Congrats. Anyway, here is your new armor. Did you get a new padded shirt from Nico?" he suddenly asked when Allison equipped a long padded jacket, not unlike a gambeson. "Yeah, I met him in the cafeteria yesterday, after you guys left, and he said it was custom made for me." Seth suddenly had a strong suspicion about who Allison Spring was, but he didn't say anything. He gave her the armor pieces and she equipped them one by one. Afterward, Seth made sure once again that they all fit well and that the circuit was connected. "Seem like everything fits. How are you feeling?" "Great," she mumbled, staring at her fingers with an eerie smile. The blacksmith suddenly had doubts about whether it was a good idea to give Allison an armor of lunacy. It was probably okay. "Wanna test it?" he asked, and 2 fireballs appeared in his hands. "Do it," she said without hesitation, a dangerous glint in her eyes. The next moment 2 fireballs crashed into her armor. Or not. The masses of whirling fire pulled apart into several flaming shreds that flowed across the armor and vanished. Allison did not even feel an impact. Was that all? She suddenly asked provocatively. Now she was getting cocky. Maybe it was better he taught her a lesson before she became a maniac rearguard that jumped into the path of spells to load up on mana. Oh, you want to play with fire? This time it wasn't a fireball, but a fire lance. The power of the spell threw Allison back, but it was disassembled, conducted and absorbed the same way the fireballs were. At the same time, 2 of the moonstones on the cuirass lit up. The wizard looked at him shocked, the dangerous glint was gone. That was 50% power. Don't get too overconfident. Before it becomes legendary, you shouldn't take risks. Even afterward, you shouldn't. Thank you, I don't know what got into me. I will keep it in mind. Don't worry, I'm glad you like it that much. If you will excuse me, I have more things to hand out. Seth's next destination was the room of Jess and James. Since they were a couple, they shared a big one. While Seth made the wand for Jess, Sivri had created 5 pieces. 2 were necklaces, 1 was a bracelet, 1 was a choker, and the last was a scepter. 2 of these were meant for the couple. At his knocking, James wearing casual clothes opened the door. Seth? What brings you here? I have some congratulatory gifts for you and Jess since you became chosen. Gifts? Jess immediately appeared over his shoulder in the door frame. What are doing? Come in, the mage was really giddy all of a sudden. Since you are so excited, let's start right away, Blacksmith said and brought out the choker, a necklace, and the fiery nail wand. I love it! Jess exclaimed as she was swinging around her new wand. Of course, the fiery wand was for the fire mage and her eyes twinkled the moment she held it in her hands. It was hard to get her attention for the next item. The necklace was also for Jess and used the salamander core. The golden dwarf had faceted the crimson core, making it look like a drop of blood in sharp contrast with its setting of Olympian silver. Similar to the fiery nail, the soul used was a product of churning dragon newt soul through the soul refinery, leaving Seth with only 50 of them. With 3 legendary items, the freshly chosen of a fire goddess may have seemed favored, but it was also compensation because Seth wouldn't be able to customize her armor of lunacy. Fire enchantments had the worst compatibility with the moonstones that were a vital part of the armor. Then, is that one for me? James asked hesitating, pointing at the last item, the choker. The choker was made from the opaque crystal Monique's team had dropped from their earth elemental boss. Sivri had shaped, cut, and faceted the crystal into rectangular cabochons, set in Olympian silver. They were attached to each other at the edges, forming a thick ostentatious choker nobody could ignore. For the soul, she synthesized warrior souls Seth had stocked up on for other projects, creating a massive soul that was mainly filled with the power of tanks. She did it to fit the crystal's main effect, which was raising defense through various means. This left only 3 possible recipients, Tecker, James, and Edward. Ultimately the choice fell on James since he also deserved a little something for becoming a chosen, also because Seth thought that the fat choker would fit him. When he equipped the choker, a wave of grey energy washed over his body. This was the choker's passive skill of stone skin that passively increased the defense against physical damage and gave his skin a somewhat pale grey hue. Wow, it really fits you, his girlfriend voiced the blacksmith's opinion in surprise. Are you sure? He asked uncertainly. Yeah, if you cut your hair a little you will look like a really trendy vampire, Seth added with a chuckle. Please don't tease me, boss, he asked feeling awkward. He's right. You would look cool, Jess teased him. They talked a little longer, and their talk soon came to the paths they were going to choose. It was the topic the couple had been preoccupied to far. It was almost unfair how many paths were known for combat-oriented classes when compared to crafting classes. It showed that crafting classes didn't often even get to the point of being eligible for a path. It also meant that the two had a huge variety to choose from. After a while, Seth had to excuse himself. He had more people to visit today. Well, I will leave you two now to get used to your new items, he said and left the couple to their own devices. His next destination was Evie's room. Chapter 826 Door to Door. Of the 5 items Sivri had made, a necklace, a bracelet, and a scepter were left. His next target was Shay's room. The bracelet the golden dwarf had made was similar to the choker, but created from the crystal of Olaf. With their current roster, the water mage was the best recipient for it. The main effect of the bracelet was the terrifying passive skill of Olaf, which allowed the boss to build up a field of ice that could shock freeze people. but it could also improve ice magic as well as offer the trait Frost Atronak. This was also thanks to Sivri taking independent actions. Although Seth didn't keep his eyes on her all the time, he was surprised to hear that Sivri was not only able to leave the workshop, but she also made a trip outside to hunt for souls on her own. Despite being too petite for heavy forging, it didn't mean that she was weak. She had killed various ice-based monsters in the mountains and processed them in the soul refinery. "Shay, do you have a moment?" he called, while knocking on the door. "Be boss. Please wait a moment," he heard him call from inside. He heard a commotion inside. Hushed voices arguing, hectic feet running around, door opening and closing. Finally, the door opened a little and through the gap, he saw a slim, bare-chested mage, sweat still pouring down his body. "Boss, hello. I didn't expect visitors today," he greeted him embarrassedly. "Are you busy? Did I come at a bad time?" he asked with a knowing grin. No. "No, what are you saying? I'm totally free," he answered hurriedly. "Oh, really? Ellie. Is he free right now, or should I leave?" the bard shouted into the room behind Shay. "Yes. I was close. It would be great if you could just leave," the slime rancher called from inside. "Be boss, it's not what it looks like," the water mage stammered. "Geez, Shay. There is no need to make a big fuss about it. Here, it's a bracelet made from that crystal Olaf dropped. I'm leaving now, so get back in there," he told the mage. "Thanks," the mage answered confused, unsure whether he thanked for the bracelet or the permission. It wasn't like members of Minasmar were banned from having relationships, as proven by Jess and James or Lydia and Mike. "I'm leaving now. Bye, Ellie," he shouted louder so she could hear him. "Yeah. Get going already," was the answer he heard before leaving. Now he had only 2 things left to deliver. "Tower, where are Linri and Evie right now?" he asked the tower ego. "Lord Evie is currently present in the enchantment labs. Lady Linri is in her room." This decided it. Linri was closer, so he was going to visit her first. On his way, he wondered about her development. From the time he met her on accident in the stronghold of the Theocracy of Chains, to her asking for a chance to grow in a different world, and how she actually ended up back in Minasmar now. He was quite surprised by her presence when he met her for the first time after his return. The young woman that had struck him as a rather selfish, stubborn, and spoiled girl had blossomed to become a powerful priestess with a pure aura. Of course, it was all smoke and mirrors created by her skills as a high-ranking healer. The moment she opened her mouth and spoke with him casually, the illusion was broken. She was quite open about how she chose to use the backing he organized for her and the preferential position as a healer, to build a reputation and make bank with her skills. At least in the beginning. Although she had not changed a lot, it really seemed like her adventures had led her to develop a certain sense of responsibility and compassion. Although Seth doubted whether she was worthy of a title like Priestess of the Fount in private, her actions really painted a better picture than her words. The blacksmith understood why Lena thought of calling her back. Especially what he heard about her performance as part of the team in the dungeon over the past days had fully convinced Seth to fully accept her and give her a legendary item. It was the first necklace Sivri had made for him as a test. Set in Olympian silver, the sun bead looked like a citron glowing with a warm fire from within. The golden dwarf had taken the healer souls Seth had prepared for more healer equipment and churned them through the soul refinery together with many common souls to increase the size. She used it to properly enchant the necklace and added various buffs to all healing skills. All in all, it really ended up being a necklace worthy of the Priestess of the Fount, just as much as Linri had proven to be worthy of his trust. When he reached the door of their newest tenant, Seth halted. "Tower, she's alone, right?" Although he didn't mind interrupting some raunchy business, it didn't mean he wanted to do so on purpose. Learning from his previous encounter, he checked in with the tower ego first. Affirmative. Following the tower ego's answer, he nodded and knocked at the door. "Linri, are you there?" "Seth," she asked, opening the door. She wore a sports bra and leotards and was wiping away sweat with a towel. The blacksmith had to admit that she really had adapted to Earth's society incredibly well in such a short time. "Oh, sorry, I was training a moment ago and was going to take a shower now," she explained with a smile. "Really, incredibly well. Now worry, I'm also not going to take much of your time. I came by to give you your welcome present since you are now part of Mina's march." "A present?" she asked with pleasant surprise. "A legendary necklace, so you can keep up with the others," he said, and brought out the sun bead pendant Sivri had made for her. Her eyes sparkled with greed as he explained the functions it had. Just so you know, you signed the soul contract, which also states that you can't sell this, Seth cautioned her, suspicious of her gaze, before handing the necklace over. Why would I ever give this out of my hands? I would sell everything else I own, and maybe my body before giving this away. Did I say that out loud? She asked, suddenly embarrassed. Even your body, you say? Well, I would have to talk with Mina if she is interested in that purchase, he joked with a grin. However, Linri's face fell. It didn't seem like she understood it as a joke, considering their first encounter. I'm not selling, she exclaimed, her face bright red. I'm joking. I'm not going to pay you for a foursome, Seth said with a shrug. He couldn't help laughing when she suddenly looked at him angrily. Why are you looking at me like that? You said you aren't selling anyway. Not selling and hearing someone being unwilling to pay are two different things, she cried out in a huff. Seth only answered her with a mischievous grin, making her face even redder in anger and embarrassment. You wanted to take a shower, I'm leaving now, he finally said as he turned away. Yeah. Go away, but thanks for the necklace. Despite being angry, she still thanked him meekly from behind. Waving at her with his back turned to her, he got on his way to the enchanting labs deeper down in the main tower. The last person he had to visit today was Evie. The blacksmith had a scepter with her name on it, figuratively. Chapter 827 Underworld Fairy. The tower master didn't bother going the long way this time and simply used the mage tower's teleport to appear in front of the laboratory's door. It wasn't locked and the door stood slightly ajar, so Seth carefully pushed it open to peek inside. Beyond the door was darkness. The lights inside the lab were turned off. What was she doing with all lights off? Evie? Can I come in? He asked into the darkness. Seth? Do you need something from me? She asked, surprised. At a snap of her fingers, the lights in the lab went on, revealing all kinds of specialized equipment for making elaborate enchantments, the arcane kind. Evie stood at one of the work tables. Whatever she had been working on was now covered by a sealed box. Were you working on something? Seth asked, nodding toward the box. Jup, I'm working on a case for the flash grenade potion Allison is developing. When I'm done, it should be like a modern grenade and further enhance the power of the potion. But it can't be exposed to light during the crafting process, or else it will incinerate prematurely, she explained with enthusiasm. Her fervent explanation and effort showed that the immortal witch didn't just have a talent for enchantments, but a passion. It was a shame she didn't care about weapon enchantments, or she could have become their most reliable enchanter. That sounds great. I came to bring you this, he said, and lifted the scepter. Like a short staff, it was roughly half a meter long and intricately carved from dark grey metal. At the top shone a dark orb with a purple hue. This was the scepter Sivri created using the orb of dusk and every bit of special bones of Seth had left. With over 10 refined parts of the soul of the 24th ethnarch that were boiled down to their powers of sorcery, magic, and necromancy, the scepter was the perfect weapon for a necromancer and witch like Evie. Not only gave Evie's class as an immortal witch Seth hoped that she would have a chance to even use the improvements to light magic, but her special trait to turn into an undead upon death also gave her ample opportunity to use the assassin-like skills of the Orb of Dusk. Not to mention that they would increase her overall survivability. As a necromancer in the middle of a mighty rotten army, she would be targeted as the weakest link in the chain. Oh, this is great! It will be a great help since I became the chosen of Persephone, she casually dropped a bomb. You what? You became a chosen of Persephone? When? Seth asked, flabbergasted. Oh, didn't I tell you? I might have forgotten to mention it. It was during the last exploit in the Holy Land. While you guys were jumping dungeons, I supported the Oath Guards and adventurers in battle. That was when it happened, she shrugged. During her whole explanation, she didn't take her eyes off the scepter even once. So? Come on, tell me, what is the class called? What can you do? Seth asked eagerly. After a moment of pondering, Evie explained that her necromancer class had been turned to Underworld Fairy. Persephone was the queen of the underworld for half a year, but she was also a goddess of spring and fertility for the other half of the year. Like the goddess, her new class also had a dualistic nature, which made it similar to her class as an immortal witch. On one hand, the underworld fairy had all the powers of a necromancer but strengthened. This represented the queen of the underworld. On the other hand, as a goddess of spring and fertility, the few support powers the necromancer class had for the undead were tremendously strengthened. Passive skills included that resurrected corpses would have a higher intellect and a health regeneration, which was out of the norm for normal undead. She was even given the privilege to bind a certain number of undead to herself. This meant that these servants could not die. If they were destroyed in battle, she would simply have to wait for a cooldown to run out before she could summon them again. Your class is really unfair. Seth sighed, thinking of all the work he had to put in to get so many strong creatures under his command. At least his smelled better and were easier on the eyes. It is, isn't it? It's a shame that I don't have that kind of fetish, or I might really become a megalomaniac. I wish the class added some enchantment buff, she sighed, too. We can't have everything. Be happy with having 2 broken classes, Seth joked, getting a smile out of the stoic Evie. They talked a little longer about her new class and how it could interact with the scepter when a sudden announcement made Seth's brain grind to a halt. Ding! Title: Creator of Legends gained. Your creation, the Hanging Tree, has become a legendary guardian tree. Your creations have it slightly easier to raise their level of existence. Ding! Your skill Golem Artisan Leave 6 has become Golem Artisan Leave 9. Ding! Your skill Soul Infusion Leave 7 had become Soul Infusion Leave 8. Ding! Your skill Engineer Leave 6 had become Engineer Leave 8. Ding! Your title, Creator, had strengthened. Plus 25 to the attributes of all inventions. 10% chance for inventions to gain new traits. Announcement: the Slumbering Realm's awakening advances faster in the presence of the newborn guardian tree. The Hanging Tree had finally attained the legendary status and became a world tree. A slew of notifications ran through his brain, but he had a hard time retaining any of the information when he heard the last announcement. The Slumbering Realm? Seth didn't 100% know what that meant, but he had a slight suspicion that it was nothing good. As the proverb goes, let slumbering realms lie, or were it dogs. Anyways, Seth was sure it was better if either of them were not awoken. He should have felt joy about the tree's ascension. All the trees along the tree root were profiting from it. The blacksmith now had a source of legendary wood, too. However, it was all immediately snuffed out. Even when it didn't directly announce its existence as a legend to the world, it seemed like it kicked off something equally bad. Are you okay, Seth? Evie asked worriedly. Didn't you also hear that announcement just now? Seth asked her, surprised to see her so calm. No? What announcement? She answered, confused. Was it possible that he was the only one who heard it, as the Hanging Tree's creator? Another thing he had to worry about: it was best he talked with Lena as quickly as possible. Maybe she knew what all of this meant. The gods knew, he really needed some answers. Where are you going? Evie asked, perplexed, when he suddenly jumped up. Sorry, Evie, I have to go talk about something with Lena. I will tell you about it later. With that, he took off and teleported to the elevator that brought him to the embassy on the surface in Delta. When he arrived in the princess office, he found her leisurely drinking tea. This was an unusual change of pace, as he had expected her to drown in a sea of papers. I'm not slacking, okay? I'm already done for the day. Looking at you, I can guess that the Hanging Tree finally did the inevitable, she asked, defeated. Just when she thought she could get a break, something new popped up. Seth nodded. Yeah, but there is another weird announcement. It said something about a slumbering realm awakening faster, the blacksmith explained worriedly. Despite his worries, Lena's face suddenly turned from surprise to happiness. Did it really say that? Are you sure? He asked, intrigued. Seth was a little bewildered at her weird behavior, but he nodded at her question. Do you know what it means? Yes, we could actually consider it good news. You already know that Earth used to have magic, but that vanished at some point, right? It's not the first world like this. From what I learned, the awakening is a phenomenon triggered by the influx of mana from the pathworks. Usually, it takes several years, maybe even a decade to happen, but so does the appearance of a legend. Seems like Earth just hates following convention. Anyway, when the slumbering realms awaken, it means that more and more of the native supernatural creatures of Earth, that vanished with the magic, will start appearing again. Their resurfacing will be able to hide the fact that stronger beasts can now enter through the pathworks. Doesn't that mean things will get even more dangerous here? The blacksmith asked, not amused. In addition to powerful otherworldly beasts and present catastrophes, old folk tales now also lusted for their lives. As if the current situation wasn't bad enough. Okay, medium good news. But we found that native flora and fauna will be inherently more hostile to foreign existences, she cheered him up. He only gave her a doubtful look. And not only bad thing awaken, you know? I'm sure there will also be amicable to humans. We should send someone to ask Nas Korn or Sam Hatch. After all, they were gods in that time, they should know what we have to look out for. If it's really as you say, Allison should be the better source, Seth commented. Hey! Lena looked surprised. Did you forget where you are? Minas Mar is the tower of the most powerful wizard in that period of decline. The library should be full of bestiaries. And the one who spent most of her time in the library is Allison. Chapter 828 Guardian Tree. Can I leave this to you? I will check on the hanging tree, he asked Lena but was already gone when she wanted to answer. Lena's explanation had calmed his nerves. The awakening was nothing he could stop or avoid, and most importantly it was not his fault. In that case, there was only one thing he needed to do. The next moment he appeared in the chamber of the hanging tree, where he found a mesmerized Karina. Standing still in front of the massive tree, she was staring at her own hands. Wasn't the dryad busy scouting new places for the tree root? When had she come back? Karina, you seem a little out of it. Are you okay? He approached the dryad carefully. Ah, hello. I'm okay. It's just, I think I got a new ability, she said, still a little confused. As his questioning look, the dryad explained what happened, she herself being surprised about what had happened. He had been growing a tree close to a mountain lake, as per the instructions of Senior White, when a massive wave of power suddenly flooded through her. The power emanated from the roots she was currently growing into a sapling. Before I could react, I was sucked into the tree and traveled here through the root systems. I believe it instinctively brought me here because it needed me, she ended her wondrous explanation with a theory. What do you mean? Seth asked, worried. What if something went wrong with the tree because of the path of legend? Karina didn't answer as she leaned against the thick trunk of the tree. Her hands stroked the bark before they sank into the wood itself. I see. The energy that suddenly flooded into it is going rampant. Even though we are separate beings, I'm still its consciousness. I need to help it control it and guide it into clear channels until it calms down, she calmed the blacksmith. The dryad fell silent, obviously concentrating on her task. The bard did not dare to utter a word, in case he could distract her and cause her to make a mistake. As she was standing there, the hanging tree started glowing in a dim golden light, illuminating the cavern. Staring at her, Seth couldn't help but use his thighs discerning eyes on the two of them. Hanging tree leave 200 path of the guardian tree. Guardian tree's spirit Karina leave 101 path of the guardian of the forest. Surprised he found, that Karina had already crossed leave 100. The path he saw with the divine skill, was most likely assigned to her once she reached that level. When the light slowly receded, its bark resembled ancient bronze or brass, and the leaves far above had taken green and azure hues, like crystalline copper oxides. Karina opened her eyes. I have managed to get the energy under control and established a channel to conduct the surplus energy through the root to the saplings, she explained with a bright smile. As she pulled her hands out of the bark, they held a big piece of wood. It was roughly the size of a big wooden log and glowed in bright yellow gold. This is for you, she said with an even brighter smile. It's a present from the tree and soaked in the purest of its energy. Seth was speechless. It would have been a lie to say that he was not here for materials, but he had not expected the tree to have already prepared something for him. How attentive of it! He cleared his throat. You didn't have to, but I will gladly accept the gift as a sign of hospitality, he joked with a big smile, as he received the heavy piece of wood. It was incredibly dense, almost as heavy as steel. He inadvertently checked the log with eyes of the maestro. Core wood of the guardian tree. Legendary. A piece of wood of a legendary guardian tree. Willingly given and enriched with the tree's power. Apart from its high durability, this special piece of wood inherits the powers of life and death because of the guardian tree's unique position as a protector who kills enemies to protect and nurtures allies. Oh please, not need to act civil now. The tree had not forgotten your favor, and neither did I, Karina chuckled. Please ask whenever you need more wood. At this point, the tree can give it to you even without my presence. You guys are a real blessing, he cried out, pulling the dryad into a tight bear hug. Ugh, please me gentler. I think my spine is cracking, she laughed loud as Seth let go of her. With this, I have all the materials I could ask for, he sheered. All that was left now was to raise instrument maker. The blacksmith wanted to bring the skill to reach at least the journeyman tier like carpentry or get both to the craftsman tier. At that point, he could get the optimal synergy of his skills. Except, maybe you could also give me some relic-rated planks, he added shamelessly to his previous statement. Karina's bell-like laughter could be heard echoing across the clearing. Of course, take however much you need. I will have to return now, she chuckled. Return? Yes, I think I know how to travel through the roots of the tree now. I can travel to any tree on the tree root almost instantaneously, she explained. Her explanation had the blacksmith prick up his ears. Do your items also travel along with you? He asked curiously. Why would you ask that? Of course. My ring. Where is my ring? She suddenly said in a panic. Fortunately, she quickly found it in her inventory. To the blacksmith's disappointment, it seemed that all items the dryad currently wore on her body would be automatically unequipped upon entering the tree. If it is like this, it is probably only your consciousness that travels through the tree and you grow a new body to harbor your consciousness at your destination, he hypothesized based on her description. For a moment he had hoped they could use Karina's new ability to quickly travel with their whole army between the tree stations. However, Legion could not be put into one's inventory because of its spatial attributes. If Karina wore it and began to travel, she would probably drop it while entering the tree. Anyway, I won't hold you back any longer, both of us have work to do. Good luck, Karina. After harvesting his materials, they finally said their farewells and Karina vanished into the trunk of the guardian tree. The blacksmith on the other hand locked himself in the workshop to make a ton of instruments. And then, when his skill was ready, he would finally create the devils. Seth, are you here? It was late evening when a clear voice called for him and he heard a knock on the door. Mina, he asked surprised as he opened the door and the cat girl jumped in his arms. You bad man! How long did you intend to let us wait? Finn and I even prepared dinner and you are locking yourself in your workshop, she complained, not letting go. You too cooked? He asked surprised. The beast girl was silent for a moment. Okay, we asked Link to cook it, but we prepared the table and all. Don't try to distract now. I could understand if you gave more attention to Finn, but I don't intend to lose to a forge, she said combatively and started fiddling around with the girdle of her coat. Wait. Mina, what are? She opened her trench coat and revealed her secret weapon. A special purchase from the Silken Dream. Seth gulped hard. Mina, we can't not hear. Come on, it's been a while since we did it somewhere else than the bed and we are all alone here. Do you think your furnace will get jealous? She asked raunchy, pressing her body against him. Why, you evil woman? To the quarters, tower, he grasped her hips tightly as they vanished from the workshop. A quiet voice could be heard, chuckling in the empty workshop. Kukiku, young love, how I missed that time, Sivri pondered with a reminiscent smile. I kinda wanted to watch. Chapter 829 Somewhere Else, 23. As he stood up from the damp earthen ground, he felt a cold rain wash over his rugged skin. The cold seeped into his skin, waking his numb bones. He didn't know what happened, or where he was, but his sharp eyes observed his surrounding in a practiced manner. Creeping over his was a crooked smile, exposing sharp fangs, as he saw where he was. An architecture he didn't know but unmistakably broken houses as far as the eye could see. His crumpled heart rejoiced at the sight of ruins, vastly reclaimed by nature. His new home. The smell of moss, mold and the vestiges of history was sucked into his bulbous nose as he sniffed for treasure. It was not the scent of treasure he smelled, but prey. Unexpectedly, he already got visitors, when he wasn't even able to properly settle yet. His hand tightened around the handle of his trusty pike and the heavy impact of his steps echoed through the overgrown city as he sprinted forward with a deranged smile. Yet, his enthusiasm was curbed when he saw that they were not humans. Had his nose gotten rusty? What is that? A goblin? A gnome? One of the big green oafs asked slowly. It's too small, even for a goblin, his companion answered. He scowled at these brainless creatures. Where was the fun if they didn't know fear? How could there be the thrill of a chase, if they didn't run? But there were two. It was good that there were two. At least one would be fun. Anyways, let's kill it. What's its level? The first bloke said, readying his oversized axe. It's... Och. Before he could really answer, a rusty blade directly pierced his heart. The rough leather armor and thick skin were like paper before the dilapidated weapon. The massive orc sank to his knees, unable to utter another word. He rejoiced, seeing the horrified expression on the other miscreant's face. "Yeah, just stay there and watch in horror," he thought to himself as he climbed on the fresh corpse and took off his cap. Fresh power flowed through his body, reinvigorating his flesh and blood, as the lifeblood soaked into his cap, giving it a fresh crimson sheen. He enjoyed the warmth and power, as he put it back on. "Kukukuk," he cackled, watching the second brute try to run away. Yes. This was it. That was the reaction he was supposed to have. Fear, panic, and the fruitless attempt to run from him. A hapless prey not knowing that it had no chance to escape, this was what he was living for. The staccato of his iron boot on earth and cobble behind the panic-stricken orc, were the harbinger of his death. He did not manage to even run half the way back to their camp before his blood also drenched the cap of his murderer. With the rush of fresh power coursing through his veins like a drug, sparks of magic jumped across his claws. It was time to make himself at home. Storm Wall, Central Mountain Range southwest of Delta. A group of adventurers covered in thick jackets arrived at the ramshackle mining operation. The buildings were roughly built huts, made of wooden planks and barely held together by a handful of nails and spit. "You guys look through the huts for the workers," a man wearing a thick parka without any armor instructed them to spread out. He himself walked up to a building of better quality. It held the overseer's office, as well as the quarters for the guards. Unlike the makeshift huts, it was a proper house able to withstand the hard winds and cold climate so close to the border of the storm. It had been weeks since the last delivery of storm ore, and the mining company finally asked him and his team to come look after several messengers who did not return. He came with a high-level party, everyone being in the late Leave 70s and equipped with a mix of epic and rare items. They had no problem reaching this deep into the mountains. "Johnson? Are you here?" he called out as he entered the building through the unlocked door. Nobody answered and didn't seem like anyone had been there for some time. The inside was cold, all doors stood ajar and many of the windows were open. Snow was piling inside the rooms. There was no sound but the howling of the wind. "Johnson," he called again as he walked further in. His steps on the wooden floor sounded unnaturally loud in the absence of any other noise but the wind. Hearing a creaking that was not caused by his boots, he stopped and listened. "Johnson?" he asked a little hesitant. "SHH. Stop being so loud. You will alert them," someone whispered hurriedly. Following the voice, he found a trap door at the end of the hallway. There was just a narrow gap with a pair of eyes looking at him. With lighter steps, he walked over to the trap door. "Who are they?" he asked in a hushed voice. "I don't know. It began with workers vanishing in the mine, and when some of the guards went to look, they vanished, too. People refused to go in the mine since then, but it didn't stop. Like shadows in the night, they came and people started disappearing one by one. I've been hiding down here ever since," he spoke quickly and quietly. He grimaced. His mission was to look for the missing deliveries. Management suspected Johnson to have some deals with others, or the mine to have been taken over by their competitors. "That means there was nothing mined at all for the past weeks?" he asked disgruntled. "What are you talking about? Of course not. How are we supposed to mine anything without workers? The last of the guards took off with the rest of the stock to get help, but nobody ever came," Johnson explained from his hiding spot. He cursed. Was he supposed to return empty-handed? There was no way he could face his boss without any of the ore. "Boss, we looked through all the huts, nobody is here," a man said as he walked up from behind. There was no getting new ore without workers either. Humanoids captured from the pathworks were not cheap, nor easy to catch. To think that there was not only no ore, but they had even lost their workers. "Any signs where they could have gone?" he asked, trying to keep his cool. "None, we could find. No footprints, packed things, blood, or signs of a fight. It's as if they were spirited away." "Tisk, Johnson, come out from there, we need to have a proper talk. Worst case, we take you with us and return for now," he told the man hiding to come up, but there was no answer from below. The trapdoor was closed. "Johnson," he stepped closer to the place the trapdoor had been. It slowly lifted again, but this time 2 lights could be seen in the gap. "New subjects located. Beginning harvest," a mechanical voice said from below. Affirmative, he heard the same voice from behind. Before he could turn around, the world went dark and he lost consciousness from an impact on his head. "Is this really okay, Reiki?" her voice wavered in the face of the portal. His warm hand caressed her cold face. His expression didn't change despite his flesh rotting at the mere touch. Do not worry, my love. The man who gave us this chance, even now I can feel my connection to him. As long as we pass this portal, we can find him. I'm sure he can help you, too. A tear, like ink, ran down her cheek, as her cold heart quivered. How much she had yearned for this warmth, how much it hurt to see her simple presence hurt the man she loved so much. After all she caused, did she even deserve this chance? He gave her a warm smile. Haha, I can read your thoughts like a book now. Despite being known for your wisdom, you are worrying again. He pulled her into a tight embrace, ignoring his flesh rotting away. This chance, we both yearned for, it's providence. Don't worry about the past. Focus on the present and look forward to our future. Reiki. She finally reciprocated his hug. Her finger dug into his clothes, unwilling to let go. With no thought of ever letting go of each other, the two stepped into the pathworks. Chapter 830 Hero and Rakshasa. Cromwell enjoyed his new work environment. Although it had taken him a few days to get used to the ancient devices of Minas Mar and completed the equipment with some of the stuff he got from Zentek, now he had made himself at home. He was even happier when the Tower Master showed unrivaled competence and brought him a high-grade research subject. With his laboratory destroyed and all his original prototypes gone, he had been afraid that he would have to start from scratch or form his own failed version. Although this disfigured subject had not been administered his perfect immortal serum, this was a derivative of the finished product and not a failed version. It was much easier to not only find the antidote the blacksmith had asked for but also improve his own situation. He felt the fluid course through his veins as he emptied the syringe. Staring in the mirror, he saw his appearance rapidly change as the aging was reversed at a visible speed. He could live with the need to turn into a hideous monster every time he had to fight seriously, but he couldn't accept the appearance of geriatric in his daily life. Aside from the curse for himself, he had also refined a whole batch of test tubes holding samples and a version of the serum he reverse-engineered from the contents of the injector and the subject's blood. With this, he had gotten everything from this subject he could get. After all his tests, the thing in the steel box now looked even more pitiful than the day it had been delivered. Staring at his face in the mirror, which now looked like a slightly older middle-aged version of himself, he remembered the instruction the Tower Master had given him for the time when there was no more worth in the subject. Stepping to a shelf, Cromwell took out a delicate chest. Inside was a special necklace. Over and over, the Tower Master had cautioned him to never try and wear it himself. According to the blacksmith, it was an item with a powerful curse. Cromwell's task was simple and clear: put the necklace on the test person and report the result. Carefully, he opened the steel box. The guy inside was an absolute mess as his body had stopped regenerating a while ago. The soul cluster could not keep up with the testing and the chronic issues his failed transformation caused. The individual souls slowly died off, making most of his wound necrotic. For the first time, the mad scientist actually felt that he granted someone mercy and he put the pristine necklace around the neck covered in oozing wounds and necrotic skin. What happened next was impossible to describe. Even Cromwell's stomach started churning, but his eyes stayed glued on Dragos, with manic fascination. By the time everything was over, the subject had dissolved. In wonder, the scientist fished the necklace from the pool of necrotic sludge. Ever since she sent the report, Cade had been unable to stand still and secretly helped people evacuate to the abandoned ruins of Ypsilon. She had come to know of this place during her first visit to Y City as a place crawling with criminals, monsters, and unmanaged dungeons. At least the latter part was not true anymore. After she failed to find out what happened to the corpses of the victims after they vanished in the fog, she scouted places for people to hide. With her strength, she doubted that she couldn't clean up a perimeter for people to live and hide. During her exploration, she found most of the dungeon that had formed in the ruins, to be occupied by agents from Y City. She had almost lost hope, that even these abandoned ruins would not be used to hide the people she saved or convinced to flee. However, she found the ruins not as controlled as she feared at first. There was an old proverb, something about a local toad and the foreign rat, or something. She found that many of the bandit hideouts that had established themselves here were far from being subdued by Y City. Many of them were scum, but there were also many who had fled to the ruins earlier and established their own forces or joined existing places. The strongest one was a bandit fortress stretching across several blocks and led by a man called Bart. Seeing how they had taken on many refugees without treating them badly, Cade had approached that place first. With Lena's permission, she negotiated with them in the name of Minas Mar, the district, about conditions to receive more refugees and resist Y-City's henchmen in exchange for support. She did so with several other agreeable places in the slums that could hold their own. With places to bring the people, she had already started evacuating and saving people on several occasions, but it was just a drop in the bucket. Uncertain, Cade waited at the roadside opposite of the massive skyscraper that was the branch of Y-City's system church. Finally, she had to admit that her power was not enough to safely raid some of the big centers where they held the prisoners prior to processing them. Those places were not only guarded by high-grade adventurers armed to the teeth but also these weird cultivators, who held unfathomable abilities. This was why she had planned to go public with her information and try to split Y-City to get more allies on her side to attack these places. As if anticipating her thoughts, the princess had stopped her and sent news that they were sending her reinforcements to help instead. Using the newly established Minas Palin as a waypoint, they were now able to send Orihumas without fearing the system god's randomization. Despite looking forward to getting a strong ally, her face fell when she recognized the man that just now stepped out from the doors of the system church. Lena had missed mentioning that the person they would send was the hero. Although she had to admit that the man possessed terrifying strength, he had not gained her sympathy or trust during the adventure in Kavati Kuinan. She didn't doubt his capability, ironically she doubted his character. Giving a secret sign to reveal herself as his contact, she waited for him to cross the road before leading him to the back door of a closed-down perfumery. "Why a perfumery?" Harker asked. "Something like a bar would be a little too obvious," she answered perfunctory. A few knocks later, they sat in a cellar room below the shop, each with a coffee in hand. "How did you manage to organize all this?" the hero asked curiously. If there was something Cade truly gained from her time in Gamma during their resistance against the Zarkists, then it was her understanding to set up underground shelters on the lower floors of districts and her experience to organize a network of people. However, I didn't do it all by myself. After a few weeks of activity here, I was approached by an already existing network of resistance. With their help, we managed to evacuate a lot of people into hideouts across the slums and ruins. Before I explain more, I want to know why you are here to help. Cade finally asked a question she had been occupied with for a while. It wasn't just about understanding the hero's intentions, but it was also a question she had been constantly asking herself in the beginning. The worst betrayal she suffered in her life was not the monsters that destroyed her life. Not even the time when she changed her class to Rakshasa. It was when the people she helped to protect stabbed her in the back and tried to hunt her down. So why did she feel so compelled to once again help people and risk being betrayed? For her herself it was not some higher morals that made her act. She had thought about it for a while and she finally became convinced that she saw herself in them. These people suffered the same fate as her. Betrayed by the people they trusted. Maybe it was not fully the same, but it was the reason why Cade felt almost driven to help. How much had she wanted for someone to reach out a hand to her when she was hunted and abandoned by her own people? At her question, the hero stayed silent for a long while. Before and during the evaluation, he had spouted a lot of nonsense about the duty of a hero. Even afterward, he tried to hold on to these values and tried to act accordingly. After his talk with Princess Lena, however, things were different. He had been used as a puppet and supported a rotten system because they used pretty words and vain values to blind him. Facing the evidence, he was forced to re-evaluate himself. In the past, I acted out of my own sense of justice. I jumped to conclusions before taking a good look at the situation, because it all fit well into my own narrative. I was blinded by my class as the hero and tried to act like one. With a sigh, he continued. I'm not here to act like a hero or defend justice. The princess asked me to help these people and that is what I want to do. She looked at the hero in shock. This explained his droopy appearance so far. His bubble was popped. For the first time, Ben Harker seemed to act out of genuine goodwill. Cade could not help but have a slightly better opinion of him. Maybe this could actually work out.